Hello there. So I wanted to take a little bit of time. I know that there's the other introductory video, but I wanted to take a brief moment to speak with you about some of the things that I think are important that are coming up around the astrology of this moment. Um, and also to take a moment to respond to some of the things that came up in the forms that you all submitted whenever you registered for the course, because I think these things are really important. And I apologize for the slightly less high quality video. I am in transit right now with some work that I'm doing that is fascinatingly, for me at least, is a group project I've been working on with um, a lovely group of people that is focused on really trying to get the most out of this moment, this entrance into the dark time of year. And I'm sure I'll have much more to say about that whenever I come back from my trip. But a couple of things really quickly that I wanted to draw some attention to before we look at some things related to the astrology of this particular moment, which is the some of the things that came up in the form. Um, Particularly, I think that it was interesting. I always ask this question about what excites us and what scares us because there's a big link, at least for me and for many others, around how we understand things that are both exciting but also anxiety provoking. Um, I always try to sit with, how sometimes they are the same. Sometimes they're part of the same things. And, a couple of the ones I'd like to focus on today were around three things. One, people being having some trepidation around encountering things that they're not so comfortable with. Two, having nothing that shows up for them whenever they're doing this work. And three, the point that they may not make time for the work in an appropriate way. So to try to think about that a little bit, what I would like to say is to start with, what I'd like to say is that with the time for doing this, there's a decent amount of material that I go into throughout this. Some of it is going to be stuff I've covered over the last several years that is, important for each moment, each time that we move into this time of year. And then some of it will be unique and responding to what's coming up for myself and for all of you and for this particular time that we're engaging with the dark within. And it is an extended encounter. So by that, we have really until the end of January in which some of this is going to be quite active and in transition, if you will. And I think that in terms of making time to show up to actually do the work that's there, whatever you end up tangling with is important for you at this time. You don't have to do everything that I offer around this. It's always invitational. You can choose to go at it at the level that you're really wanting to. And I think that showing up less to the materials that I'm providing and more to yourself experiencing and encountering the changes that are going on around you as we move into the darker time of year and as we also um, make our way towards the heart of winter and towards the beginnings of spring, or the promise of spring, we might say. So we move towards that heart of winter. One of the things I often really get on to people about is that we tend to start our seasons way too early. So especially having lived in much colder places, we'll often end up saying that it's already winter when the end of December hasn't even rolled around. And again, having lived in colder places than I grew up in, this makes winter last a really long time. So, these holidays that we're experiencing at the end of November, or end of December, end of October, excuse me, beginning of November, are really a gateway into the dark time of year. It's not, as I've said in the other video, it's not a um, done, dusted, and complete process at this point. It is really the opening, and while I've spent the last I've spent the last week in the Netherlands and in Belgium, and here, especially since I've been in Belgium, it's not as heavy cloud cover as I'm used to in Scotland this time of year. So we've been having glorious light still, and it is that later, this autumnal light that is coming in. As in the northern hemisphere, what we're noticing is that the way that the path of the sun is starting to descend. Its declination, its height that it's able to reach above the sun, which reaches the height of the Tropic of Cancer uh, at the summer solstice, and then that arc of the sun during the day starts to descend. Likewise, what you're going to notice is that since we've passed the equinox now, it's gotten to the halfway point, and equally the arc of the path of the heavens, and by this I mean it's particularly obvious with the path of the moon, but with the path of the planets at night, is that arc is going to raise up higher and higher and higher, and will come to its height at the winter solstice. So the path of of everything in the winter nights is moving all of those things up much higher than they would normally do in the summertime. But what happens as the sun begins to move down in its declination during the day is that we are noticing that the light coming to us from that aspect of the horizon is coming at a sharper angle. And this is a very beautiful and I think, very mysterious light because of the way that it is meeting with our own experiences of the world, and casts very different kinds of shadows. Autumn is full of all of these very particular kinds of shadows created by this dynamic. And this golden moment that's starting to emerge, it's important that we really sit with the changes that are occurring around us in autumn. A few people have written to me and said that their leaves have already have left all the trees, that are going to shed leaves. But for many of us, this change is still happening, and it might be different this year where many places are experiencing a warmer autumn. And so the way that the green bloods around us are responding to that may be unique to our area. But this moment where the wisdom of the trees, they're choosing, to release what is not of use, this idea of abscission, letting go of what we need to free ourselves from, these tangling with the actual experiences that we're able to engage with around us in the land and in the others that we share our places with. Both human and other than human. I think this is the main thing, that we can really start to, and making time to be present to the daytime when we can, and making time to be present to the nighttime and these changes, and letting that actually inform us and teach us. So around showing up, I think that's the most important thing, that we could really do, and anything extra from that will support all of those things. So the other piece was around trepidations around what's in the dark. I did cover it a little bit, but just to remind us that I think for us, as human beings, there are probably real reasons why we have a fear of what is unknown as it relates to the darkness. And this is not a stupid kind of fear. However, I think where it gets mixed with us is that because the darkness is able to be both a screen for our hopes and fears, as well as an invitation to engage with something that is quite different than we are in terms of, well, a different mode of being, because it is more. Um, there's a higher level of intimacy in the night. Our visual sense has changed, is not as emphasized. Our more physical senses, the those that I would say are all the touch senses, like the smelling of things, which is a kind of touch, tasting of things, which is kind of touch, and also the skin and our sense of our dark senses, that are part of our corporeal awareness. All of these things become more heightened in the dark, and because of our emphasis, particularly in this time where we don't spend much time in the dark, then there's um, a lot of trepidation that's there. And then when we think about that on a larger level, the things that inhabit the dark, both maybe in a way that relates to something that we might think of as our psyche, but also to the world of spirit, what is at the edge of what we can see. Um, we have a wisdom that is kind of saying we should pay attention. We should be aware of this space, and we don't need to try, as best we can, we try to avoid being overwhelmed by that experience. So we don't need to be overwhelmed by it, but also this experience of fear that we are encountering there can also hone many of our awarenesses to it. So if we can, kind of find that tender place between the fear and the excitement and allow that to hone some of our senses, it actually can open up these things for us in a more profound way. So around that, if there's ever anything that I'm encouraging you to do, or things that are maybe not appropriate for you based on your comfort levels or your ability level, or whatever it might be for you, please write to me and we can brainstorm together about adapting. Or you are your own spiritual authority, so you adapt as you see fit. And it's always invitational. As I said, it's never done and dusted thing. We have night every single 24 hours, right? So we have, as part of the solar cycle, we have it, and then we have a season that emphasizes it every year. So there's always more time for learning to develop these things. And then the last one is around not seeing things. The idea that we're meant to kind of see things the way that you might be seeing this video right now. And what I would say around that, and maybe we can do a little bit of something exploring this in more depth at some time. I think that one of our problems often, one of our first issues, is that we think about seeing as a kind of um, surface level thing, that or that the thing that is seeing is not is a non-body. And what I would say, and we'll again, I hope to explore this a little bit more, is that the body is majorly implicated in how we have visionary experience, and also the way in which a visionary experience is kind of rooted within the body, almost like the way that a plant is rooted within the earth and then can extend out from that. So we can extend a kind of different forms of body that are not attached to our physical body as we know it, that are able to see into and experience worlds that are quite different than our own. A lot of this really does rely on us starting to understand a deeper connection between what is the body and what is this mode of seeing. So the other aspect around it is that many of what we might experience is not so much about seeing or having what some people call like inner images or mental images or visionary experiences. It is oftentimes about uh, physical senses that we're encountering. So pay attention to all of this. Pay attention to these, what we might call darker senses that aren't as much about illumination in the way that we normally think about it, but about, yes, about sensations. And presences that kind of come to us. So, think that was all I wanted to say this time around, and hopefully again there's always more time to explore this. So what I'm going to do is you're going to see a little bit of because I'm working from my laptop today, so you're going to see a little bit of the background stuff here. But what we're going to do is I'm going to bring up solar fire. So this is the recent eclipse, the partial solar eclipse that occurred in the very beginning of Scorpio. And something that I wanted to bring up around this is, let me just pull up my pen. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize around this is it is not in many ways it's not a true eclipse because it's only partial. So some of the ways in which we think about eclipses, in terms of some of the ways that we think about eclipses in terms of the duration or how long this takes effect, because it didn't actually eclipse the disk of the sun completely, and it wasn't an annular eclipse where it's kind of meeting very intensely with the center of the sun. Some of that doesn't hold as well. But what we do see is something that I think is quite interesting, which is the way in which the cazimi between Venus and the sun had just occurred at the very last degrees of Libra. And as the sun ingresses into Scorpio, and is now time to have this partial eclipse, this I'm calling it like a celestial chthonic Venus is sort of present with the sun at this moment of the sun's diminishing light, because as I said, we've moved past the halfway point, the equinoctial point that would occur in Libra for the sun's path. The sun is definitely descending into darkness at this point. And what I like in some ways is the way in which this chthonic celestial because she's on the other side of the sun from the earth, but also chthonic because immediately I think of a Venusian power that deals within the realms of a watery, like earth level kind of filtration, or dealing with waste, you might say, or even we could go further and think of it almost as like an Ereshkigal like figure. And I think that equally the fact that it's a south node eclipse does highlight for us also the idea that we need to consider, what is of excess within us, what is, and wherever this is occurring within your chart, particularly if Scorpio or the fixed signs are a sensitive place within your chart, or maybe this sign is particularly activated, it'd be an interesting time for you to consider in this lunation, because now, we've moved on. We've moved on a few days from this now, so we just bring it to where we are now, which is the 28th. We'll see, now the moon has definitely left the sign of Scorpio and has begun, it's showing its first waxing crescent in the sign of Sagittarius. And so during this course of this lunation that's going to occur, as the moon advances to come to the total lunar eclipse that will occur in Taurus, we can think about what it is that we are like the deciduous trees that we might be around. What is it that is of excess that we no longer need, that is needing to be let go, so that we can truly meet this challenge? Because this year in particular, I think that the fact that the sun is experiencing its diminishing power within the sign, within the sign of Scorpio, but then also the way in which Mars is super implicated as Lord of this sign, and Mercury will soon be entering into Scorpio as well. Then I think this is a moment to really consider, what would be of use that we can shed now, and maybe even engaging in some bathing practices where we are, applying oils to our skin and brushing our skin with a very strong, bristly brush to just sort of ease and move any of that excess off of us. And we can think of that in a more as occurring on all levels, within that. So let's just take a moment to think about what's going to happen with the eclipse, and then we'll talk briefly about with the lunar eclipse, and then we'll talk briefly about Mars's retrograde, because that is happening like in these moments now. So with this lunar eclipse, we have Moon in opposition to Venus, Mercury, and the Sun. The moon is very close to Uranus. It is a north node eclipse. It's bringing in some of the dynamics that are related to the square between now the Sun, the Moon, Uranus, this stellium of planets, and Saturn. And again, now the way that the roles of the dispositing is going on, as this is a martial sign, Scorpio is a martial sign, then we know that Mars is going to be an important planet in part of it. And, the way that Venus obviously is ruled by is the ruler of Taurus, and Venus is in a Mars-ruled sign. There's mutual reception happening between Mars and Mercury because they are exchanging signs, and Saturn is establishing something about his role that is important here. So this lunar eclipse has a profound ability to, I think, usher in unexpected but also important change that relates to what we're needing to do. And I think, again, sitting where it's happening within our chart is an important one to kind of tangle with. And this is one that will play out for a little bit longer. And I hope to have a video that more addresses this eclipse in its fullness more directly. But now I think the important thing for us to do is to sit with what's going on with this moment that we're in, this lunation, this last eclipse lunation, with this solar eclipse, partial solar eclipse, this new moon that has occurred, where we are being kind of asked to consider what is of excess that we can let go of, that is of a martial scorpionic nature for ourselves. All right, so the other thing I wanted to show you is that it's not happening yet, but as the sun will move into Gemini, and this is something that will come over time, we're going to get to this point where as the sun sets, so it happened probably about here, as the sun sets, which we're seeing right there, Mars is going to rise. And so this is a transition that takes some time, that doesn't occur immediately. We see here that this doesn't happen until the 8th of December. We're leading up to this, but Mars will take on his role at the Sun-Mars opposition as being the Lord of the night. And in that way, when this opposition occurs, Mars is closer to the Earth. It will appear brighter it will be brighter in our sky. It will also rule the night, Nergal ruling the night, as the way that the underworld is sort of reflected or given presence in the night sky. So this is something to think about. We're not there yet where this is going to happen. Now we're just starting the Mars retrograde is just about to begin very soon here. In the next couple days, it's stationing, and there'll be more to say about this in future videos, but I just wanted to give us a little heads up around some of that. So let me just switch back to me. Okay. So I think that's it for now. I'm going to upload this and I'll get it out to you in an email. And again, enjoy going to the crossroads, that practice, adapt it to whatever fits you. It can be expanded on. It can be, I've made it pretty condensed for a reason so that you can fit it in, but also to make it something that you can expand on based on your own custom. And I wish you a very happy All Hallows and the many festivals that follow right after. And I will be in touch very shortly. Wishing you all the best.